Day 470 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Jelsey here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a quick look at those Russian losses, and currently, Russia is sitting on over 212,000 military personnel losses. So in terms of hardware losses for the Russian forces, they're dealing with 18 tanks, 16 APVs, and another whopping 28 artillery. Oh, and add 3 air defense systems to that mix there as well. So these recent daily figures obviously have a bit of an uptick from your typical day's numbers in the past month or so, as the AFU has in some measure commenced pre-counter-offensive operations or indeed counter-offensive operations on the field. Although Ukraine has not officially announced anything to that effect just yet. Then we'll head over across back to the map today, and we'll start out in the Belgorod region, Oblast of Russia there, as Russian air defenses were seen active in and nearby the city of Belgorod in the last day, right as Belgorod still holds. At least as far as Russian freedom militia groups are concerned, with them having been firing upon Russian army positions in the south of the oblast there. And of course, Russia has already since confirmed that this area of Novotavelzenka has already been completely put under the control of the RDK, which is actually the Russian acronym for the Russian Volunteer Corps. Then we'll head across to the Ukrainian map again today, as for Russia's recent war crime of blowing up the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant dam right there on the Dnipro of the Kherson region, as more satellite imagery now shows the extent of the destruction caused by one of Russia's most heinous and desperate acts throughout this war, which has caused needless humanitarian and ecological consequences. Where, as you can see there has been a widening of the river, otherwise known as flooding of the region. So with Russia's scorched earth tactics that have no regard for life or the environment, and for that matter no regard for Ukrainians on one side and even Russian soldiers on the other side, there has since been a whole bunch of rescue operations carried out by the Ukrainian forces. For instance, like right here, using quite an unique amphibious rescue vehicle that's Ukrainian built, in fact, built in Kyiv. This one's called the Sherp Bogan, and travels on water and land. Now it's got land speeds of up to 40 kilometers an hour and traversing water bodies to a speed of up to 6 kilometers an hour. Also, Ukrainians carried out some tricky rescue operations on the south of the Dnipro River, which is of course the Russian occupied side. Now, in this instance, a Ukrainian drone dropped a bottle of water to someone, followed by a Ukrainian forces assisted rescue shortly thereafter in Oleshki, of all places. And then, as for the zoo on the Russian occupied side, just on the south, near Novokakhovka, Russia had a simple solution for helping out the zoo animals, as they simply claimed in a brilliant stroke of genius that there was no zoo. Such savages. And note on the screen that this was reported by the Russian state media outlet TASS as part of their continued attempts to spin some propaganda on that one. And speaking of animals, a lot of animal rescues have been underway. As for example, here we have a Ukrainian policeman saving a dog. Then also in Kherson City, a man heard meowing on a flooded street. It turned out that it was this eensy-weensy tiny ginger kitten, which was itself escaping from the flooding, clinging to dear life on the wall with the last of its strength. But to add insult to injury to all of this, the Russian forces still performed some shelling, making rescue operations all that more difficult. So we're talking shelling back into the northern part of the Kherson Oblast there, the North Bank. And then so, in line with your typical Russian sentiment, as 36 hours after the dam collapsed, in fact more than 36 hours after, Putin himself at such a point in time ordered the head of Russia's Emircom to help people in flooded areas within the Russian-occupied Kherson region. So trust the guy that gave the order to blow up the dam to have a reactionary response of over 36 hours later to try to save face and make him look like some kind of hero, but it's too little too late. And I've also got to say, saving face is one thing, but implementing an order like that is another, and it probably won't even end up happening. But in the end, and I've said it countless times before, but Russia has simply spread their resources too thin, with a front line that is arguably 1,600 kilometers or about 1,000 miles or so long. So Russia panicked, blew up the dam, and temporarily, at least, slowed down any potential land-based Kherson/Crimean offensives from the Ukrainian forces. And I mean, if I had a completely compassionless disregard for human life like Putin does, and that goes for his disregard for his own actual soldiers, his own forces, I'd probably blow up the dam too. Oh, and what's interesting in this region is the Russian lies just continue and continue, because the Russian-installed governor of the Kherson Oblast was doing an interview in the occupied river settlement of Nova Kakhovka, saying, quote, "Everything is fine in Nova Kakhovka. People go about their daily business like any other day." And he said this right amongst the backdrop of a ridiculously flooded town. I mean, really? I've said this before as well, but it's not even like they're trying to make a good lie anymore. Then we'll move across on the map to the Donbass, and in particular Bakhmut, just for a hot second, where the AFU continues to make gains north and south of the city as they disrupt Russian flanks, which are very much needed to assist in the actual take-in and keep-in of Bakhmut in the first place. So they're going all the way on the north to making the center of Berkivka completely contested at this point, if not even more so. This isn't the most up-to-date map. It just cannot be, given the secrecy around operations that take place on a day-to-day basis. And then on the south, they're really scooching towards the settlement of Andrivka, so a little bit further down from Klishchivka. And you can see this as well. If we use the date map, we'll just go back and forward a bit. We're seeing some gains there in that area, even Kurdimivka. So these are towns that I haven't mentioned in some time because there hasn't been a lot of action there, or indeed an offensive operation of some sort from the Ukrainian forces to start to take it back, essentially, to liberate it. So in other words, it's good to see that we're talking about these settlements again. Then we'll zoom out and then head on down south in the Donbass to, here we go, Marinka. So we're getting some word that Chechen units have led unsuccessful attempts to take the town of Marinka. So learning their lessons the hard way, just as the regular Russian army did and the Wagner PMC did as well. In a town or place that has seen little change since February's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. And even, actually, since 2015, which is around the time of Russia's original quote-unquote Donbass separatist military offensives, which the passage of time clearly has really shown us now that it was a Russian-backed or flat-out Russian invasion of the Donbass in 2014. Then we'll move across for a moment to Zaporizhia as Ukrainian units are pushing through heavily mined areas to advance between 5 to 10 kilometers in some areas of the front lines. Now, lost my place, but speaking of which, check out this footage here. I really like it. As at the beginning, you can see the charge lines being laid, pushed or thrown with a forward outwardly force. The Ukrainian forces doing this to clear the mines there. And this footage was taken somewhere along the front lines of eastern Zaporizhia, likely, where it intersects with the Donbass. So likely around this location there. And you know, the irony of all this is that Ukraine expects roads to be mined by Russian forces, of course. So their actions are geared towards mine clearing operations. But contrastingly, Russia does not expect to have to deal with their own mines, as different Russian units carelessly and without documenting or communication to other Russian units have mined up positions along different lines of defense. And as a result, other Russian units have literally driven into the Russian-laid mines. You see, communication is key in all aspects of life, and especially in a war zone. And Russia's army specifically is testament to those inadequacies. Then we'll move across a little bit past Kherson, which I've already mentioned. So there was also flooding at the nearby Mykolaiv Oblast as well, in the Namvi district. So up in this region. But do note, it was said that by today, June 8th, is when the floodwaters will reach their peak before they start to recede. Which is promising news, but it is still expected to be extremely muddy and wet. And so there we have it, one of Russia's main reasons for performing this despicable act of blowing up the dam. And it's pretty sad, actually, for Russia's military. I mean, if that's the best card up your sleeve, militarily speaking, to slow Ukrainian advances and other forces' advances, you've got to start accepting things are just not going to plan. Then moving across to some news for today, or this is probably some pre-news somewhere on the map, I'd say. We've got a video here of a heavy machine gun shield on an Australian-donated M113 armoured personnel carrier in Ukrainian service, which deflected a fairly heavy round. Possibly a 12.7 API, which really stands for a armor-piercing round, or armor-piercing incendiary round, which actually explodes on impact. Hence the marks left there as well. And saving the gunner in the process, so very neat to see. Then in some other news, Operation Air Defender 2023 for NATO will start on Monday with up to 10,000 exercise participants from 25 nations with 250 aircraft, and will train air operations in European airspace under the command of the German Air Force. Now, more importantly about this news, it will be the largest deployment exercise of air forces in NATO's history. So I'd like to give a massive shout out to Russia for uniting the bulk of NATO's air forces in ways or magnitudes never seen before. Then in some other news, Chechen and TikTok army leader Kadyrov has purchased 8 infantry mobility vehicles from China to support their efforts largely in the Donbass and Zaporizhia, which is actually the first known military vehicle purchase by Russia from China since the beginning of the invasion last year. And I do wonder if Russia gets pressed on this issue. They'll simply say, oh, the Chechens are using their own funding or something like that. That doesn't really matter considering they are part of Russia's military. But more importantly, it's quite a dicey situation for the supplier of said vehicles. So prepare for sanction threats, China, followed by sanctions if you do it again, very likely. Then we'll round it off with a couple of funnies today. I've got so many, but I'll just do 2 for now. So Russian channels were celebrating another victory in Crimea, saying air defenses destroyed a Ukrainian drone. Except there was one teeny problem. The Russians, in fact, shot down their own UAV, the Mohajer 6, which is supplied by Iran, and looks a little like Ukrainians' Bayraktar drones. And so these Russian soldiers that filmed it were so confidently proud of spotting it and filming it there. which is yet another example of separate arms of the Russian military simply not communicating with each other. Then, in a final funny, a Russian Ka-52 helicopter provided footage to Russian state media to show the firing at and destruction of a Leopard 2 tank in the field. Just one problem again, it was a Ukrainian harvester sprayer, not a Leopard 2 tank. I mean, even a semi-professional can clearly see that this is an agricultural harvester or sprayer machine. Although the joke would be that, for instance, Ukrainian tractors are the natural enemy of anything Russian hardware like. And so we're talking big Russian media outlets claiming or confirming this, such as Kots News and RIA Novosti. They didn't even fact check it. But should I really be surprised? I mean, Russian journalism isn't exactly known for its journalistic integrity. So that'll be it for today, guys. Thanks for watching. Please leave a comment, hit the like button, really helps boost out the channel, and subscribe if not already. I really would appreciate that. And I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.